What's going on, everyone? Let me tell you about something that just went down on SportsCenter today that has me absolutely fired up about the possibilities for the Golden State Warriors moving forward. And I'm talking about the kind of roster move that doesn't involve a max contract superstar, but could genuinely be the missing piece that transforms this team from good to great. This is the type of under-the-radar acquisition that championship teams make when they're one or two players away from being legitimate contenders. The kind of move that 5 years from now people look back on and say, that was the moment everything clicked. Chichi. So buckle up, because what I'm about to share from today's ESPN broadcast isn't just speculation or wishful thinking. It's based on real reporting from credible sources who are seeing the exact same opportunity that the Warriors have right in front of them. All right, here's the situation that had the entire SportsCenter panel absolutely locked in this morning. And I'm talking about analysts who normally focus on the big market teams and the household names, but who today couldn't stop discussing the potential impact of a role player that most casual fans probably don't even know. The main story, the headline that kept coming up over and over during the broadcast, is that the Sacramento Kings have essentially put their entire roster on the trade block, according to Jake Fisher's reporting. And buried in that mass fire sale is a name that should have Warriors fans absolutely salivating: Keon Ellis. Now, before you dismiss this as just another trade rumor that'll never materialize, let me walk you through exactly why the ESPN crew was treating this so seriously, and why this could be one of the smartest moves the Warriors make all season. Hey, what's up, everyone? Before we jump into this massive Warriors news, I just want to ask you for a quick favor that would mean the world to me. If you could just take 1 second right now and hit that like button, it would be incredibly important to me and helps this channel grow so much. I know it seems like a small thing, but those likes genuinely make a huge difference in getting this content out to more Warriors fans who need to stay updated on everything happening with this team. So seriously, just tap that like button real quick. It literally takes 1 second, and it helps me out more than you know. Let me start by giving you the full context that SportsCenter was establishing right at the top of the show, because understanding what's happening in Sacramento is absolutely crucial for grasping why this opportunity exists and why the Warriors are in such a perfect position to capitalize. The Kings are having an absolutely disastrous 2025-26 season. Like we're talking about a complete organizational meltdown. They came into the year with expectations of competing for a playoff spot and have completely fallen apart. The chemistry is broken, the system isn't working, players are frustrated, and the front office has apparently decided it's time to blow everything up and start from scratch. According to Fisher's reporting that was discussed extensively on SportsCenter, Sacramento is willing to trade virtually anyone except Keegan Murray and Nike Clifford, which means everyone else, from veterans to young players, is potentially available. Now, here's what really got the SportsCenter analysts excited about this whole situation, and this is where you start to see the Warriors' opportunity becoming crystal clear. Keon Ellis represents exactly the type of player who becomes available when rebuilding teams need to make moves, but still want to get value back. He's only 25 years old. He's shown legitimate NBA ability, especially on the defensive end. And as a three-point shooter, he's on a cheap contract right now, which makes him easy to match salary-wise in trade. And most importantly, he's the kind of complementary piece that contending teams desperately need, but rebuilding teams can afford to move. The Kings aren't going to build around Ellis, which means his trade value is reasonable rather than prohibitive. But here's where the story gets really fascinating, according to today's ESPN breakdown. And this had the panel debating for probably 45 minutes straight. The Warriors just played one of their best games of the season against the Utah Jazz, a game where they won dominantly despite not having Draymond Green available. And one of the biggest stories from that game was how well Quinton Post played. As the starting center, Post was absolutely dominant defensively. He was protecting the rim, he was switching on to guards and staying with them, he was rebounding, he was doing everything you want from your anchor in the middle. The Warriors went on an 18-0 run in the second quarter, largely because Post was erasing everything at the rim and allowing them to get out in transition. What the Sports Center crew kept emphasizing, and I think this is absolutely critical for understanding why Ellis makes so much sense, is that while Post solves the Warriors' interior defense problems, they still have massive needs on the perimeter. They're getting torched by quick guards, they're struggling to contain penetration, they're allowing too many open threes because their perimeter defenders can't stay in front of their man. Ellis would solve those problems immediately. He's an elite perimeter defender, the type of guy who can guard the opposing team's best scorer and make his life absolutely miserable for 30-35 minutes a game. His defensive intensity and awareness would perfectly complement what Post brings in the paint. The show dove deep into Ellis's specific skill set, and here's where you really see why he'd be such a perfect fit for the Warriors' system. Ellis shot 43.3% from three-point range last season, which is elite tier in the NBA. This season he's at 42.4%, which is still absolutely fantastic. We're not talking about a defensive specialist who you have to hide on offense. We're talking about a legitimate 3-and-D player who can space the floor, who can knock down catch-and-shoot opportunities, who defenses have to respect. In Steve Kerr's motion offense, where ball movement and spacing are paramount, having someone like Ellis who can hit open shots and defend at a high level is invaluable. What really got me thinking during the Sports Center segment was when they started discussing the Warriors' current roster construction and why now is the perfect time to add a piece like Ellis. Steph Curry is 37 years old and still playing at an incredibly high level, putting up 31 points in 29 minutes like it's nothing. But the Warriors can't keep putting him in suboptimal lineups with 3 or 4 guards where the defense is broken and they're getting torched. Adding Ellis would give Kerr the flexibility to play bigger, more defensive-minded lineups without sacrificing spacing or shooting. You could have Post protecting the rim, Ellis locking down the perimeter, and still have elite shooting with Curry and others. The panel also explored what a potential trade package might look like, and this sparked probably the most intense debate of the entire segment. One scenario that kept coming up involves the Warriors sending Jonathan Kuminga as the centerpiece of a larger deal. Now that's obviously a massive decision because Kuminga has shown flashes of being a future all-star, but he's also been incredibly inconsistent, and his timeline doesn't perfectly align with Curry's championship window. The analysts were divided, with some arguing that trading Kuminga for Ellis straight up would be selling low on a high-upside player, while others countered that when you have Curry playing at this level, you can't afford to wait for Kuminga to figure it out. You need players who can contribute to winning now. Another trade framework that was discussed extensively on ESPN would involve the Warriors potentially going after both Domantas Sabonis and Keon Ellis in a larger package, sending out Kuminga, Moses Moody, and Buddy Hield to Sacramento. Now that's a blockbuster deal that would completely reshape both rosters, giving the Warriors an all-star caliber big man in Sabonis plus the perimeter defense of Ellis, while Sacramento would get young players who fit their rebuilding timeline plus salary relief. The Sports Center analysts were split on whether the Warriors should go that big, with concerns about giving up too much young talent and about whether Sabonis's defensive limitations would create problems. What the ESPN crew kept coming back to, and I think this is absolutely vital to understanding the Warriors' situation, is that they're in this weird middle ground right now where they're too good to tank, but not quite good enough to be championship favorites. They're 10-9 on the season, which is respectable but not dominant. Curry is still elite, but he can't carry the team by himself every night. They desperately need to add pieces that can help them win now while Curry is still in his prime, and Ellis represents exactly that type of addition without requiring them to mortgage their entire future. The show also spent significant time analyzing Ellis's situation in Sacramento and why he'd potentially be available despite being a quality young player. New Kings coach Doug Christie hasn't been giving Ellis consistent minutes despite his obvious talent, which is frustrating for a player trying to establish himself and position himself for a big contract in free agency. Some nights he plays 25 minutes, other nights he barely sees the court. That inconsistency, combined with Sacramento's decision to rebuild, creates the perfect storm for Ellis to be moved. And, from his perspective, going to a contender like the Warriors, where his role would be clearly defined, could be exactly what he wants. What I found particularly fascinating during the Sports Center discussion was when they started breaking down how Ellis would fit into specific Warriors lineups and rotation. The analysts were showing how you could play lineups with Curry, Ellis, Jimmy Butler, Andrew Wiggins, if they keep him, and Post, giving you elite shooting, solid defense at every position, and proper size. Or you could go smaller with Curry, Ellis, Butler, Draymond, and Post when you need more playmaking. The versatility that Ellis's skill set provides would give Kerr so many more options than he currently has, where too often he's forced into awkward four-guard lineups that get destroyed defensively. The panel also explored the financial implications of acquiring Ellis, and this matters because it affects Golden State's long-term planning and luxury tax situation. Ellis is on an expiring contract, which means he'll be a free agent after this season and will be expecting a significant raise. The Warriors would need to decide whether they're willing to commit long-term money to keep him, or if they're essentially renting him for this playoff run and hoping he helps them win a championship. That uncertainty is part of why his trade value might be more reasonable than you'd expect for a player of his caliber, because teams know they might only get a few months before having to negotiate a new deal. One thing that came up repeatedly during the ESPN analysis was the competition for Ellis's services. According to multiple reports, more than half the league has called Sacramento inquiring about his availability. That's not hyperbole. That's actual reporting from credible sources. When you have that many teams interested, it drives up the price and creates a bidding war scenario. The Warriors can't just assume they'll lowball the Kings and get Ellis cheap. They're going to have to put together a competitive offer or risk losing out to another contender who's willing to pay more. The Sports Center crew also discussed how adding Ellis would impact the Warriors' defensive identity and scheme. Right now, Golden State has stretches where they look competent defensively, and other stretches where they get absolutely torched, especially on the perimeter. There's no consistency, no sustained excellence on that end. Ellis's defensive intensity and ability to stay in front of quick guards would immediately raise the floor of their defense, would make them more consistent, would give them a legitimate stopper they can deploy in crunch-time situations. Paired with Post protecting the rim, suddenly you're talking about a defense that could actually be good rather than just okay. What really resonated with me during today's broadcast was when the analysts started connecting this potential Ellis acquisition to the Warriors' championship aspirations. They showed how in that recent win over Utah, the Warriors went on that massive 18-0 run in the second quarter because they were getting consistent stops defensively, which led to easy transition bucket. That's the formula for dominant basketball. That's how you blow teams out, rather than playing close games all the time. Adding Ellis would make those defensive stops more consistent, would create more transition opportunities, would allow Curry to operate in space offensively rather than having to create everything in the half-court. The show also touched on some of the potential downsides and concerns with acquiring Ellis. He's going to be a free agent soon with no guarantee he stays long-term. His role in Sacramento has diminished this season, which raises questions about whether there are issues we're not seeing. And giving up someone like Kuminga, who has all-star upside, is a risk even if he hasn't put it all together yet. These are legitimate concerns that can't just be dismissed, but the counter-argument is that when you have Curry at 37 playing at this level, you can't afford to wait for young players to develop. You need to maximize this window while it's still open. One aspect that got extensive discussion on SportsCenter was how this move would affect the Warriors' rotation and playing time distribution. If Ellis comes in and takes 25-30 minutes per night, that means fewer minutes for some of the other guards and wings on the roster. But here's what the analysts kept emphasizing. In the playoffs, when rotations shorten to 8 to 9 players, you want your best players on the court. You want guys who can execute in high-pressure situations. Ellis has shown in Sacramento that he can handle important minutes, that his defense doesn't deteriorate under pressure, that he makes winning plays even when the spotlight is brightest. The panel also discussed the broader strategic question of whether the Warriors should be buyers at the trade deadline or if they should accept that this isn't their year and focus on development. The consensus seemed to be that as long as Curry is playing at this level, you owe it to him to try to compete, to surround him with the best possible pieces, to give him a legitimate chance at another championship. Trading for Ellis wouldn't mortgage the future in a devastating way. It would just be a calculated bet that the right complementary pieces around Curry can still lead to special things. Listen, after watching the entire SportsCenter segment today about Keon Ellis potentially joining the Warriors, I'm absolutely convinced this is the type of move that could genuinely change the trajectory of their season. Ellis isn't going to be an all-star or sell jerseys or dominate highlights, but he brings exactly what the Warriors desperately need: elite perimeter defense and reliable three-point shooting. His age and skill set fit what they're trying to accomplish. His defensive intensity would complement Post's rim protection perfectly, and his shooting would space the floor for Curry. Yes, there are risks with his contract situation and with what they'd have to give up. But when you have a 37-year-old Curry still playing like one of the best players in the league, you have to be aggressive about maximizing that window. This could be the move that takes the Warriors from fringe playoff team to legitimate contender.